right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a very special IRS Appreciation Day. Yes, it is April 15th, and we're in the Timcast IRL studios. I'm here with my trusty co-host, Mr. F Your 3% Tax on Tea, Simon Winch.
And look what you got now.
Simon, good to see you on this glorious days of days. You know, you've got Halloween for the kids, you've got, you know, Christmas for the kids, and Hallmark holidays for the adults, but there's just something so special about April 15th.
Yeah, it's got a ring to it, doesn't it?
It was kind of depressing. I just got back from the post office, and I go in there, just a line of just distraught and downtrodden people. All in a line looking for one.
If it was a movie, it would be triple R rated.
You think so?
Well, just think about what the IRS is doing to you, and then try and put that in some twisted sexual innuendo, and it would be triple X rated out of the block.
Well, that was kind of the scene that was being painted in the post office. I got up there to them, and it was just a long line of people looking for one stamp for one envelope on this particular day. And I was amongst with them. And I finally get up there, and I was like, I guess I'm the rest of them. Just one stamp so I can pay off my extortionists and stay out of a cage. And he kind of chuckled and, you know, agreed with me, whatever. Everybody laughed. And
I must admit, it didn't figure that we were going to do a show this evening, and it was the 15th. The dreaded 15th.
It's horrible.
I walked out of there and I told him, I said, well, like I said, I reckon it's a good thing that they serve liquor next door. They're at Anastasia's, so everybody can go in there, and, you know, you're having to go in there and pay 68 cents for a stamp to fund a service that comes out of your taxes already anyway, to some degree. By the way, we're welcome. Stuart Angel's back with us again. He's been on so many shows now. It's kind of like it's almost a quarterly or every couple of months we got to bring him back, because he keeps up with a lot of the stuff that we enjoy talking about. He's got a really good perspective about it, and so much stuff happens that it makes sense to bring him back. Everybody likes those shows. Everybody listens to them. Get really good numbers.
Well, I mean, we're expecting the purple smoke to fill the room yet again.
Well, before that,
some point in time.
Speaking of tax day, which is just theft, especially
no question about
especially if you add up everything, it's around 54 to 56% of every dollar is going to taxes. So basically,
and that's 56% of what the dollar is worth today, not what the dollar could get you 100 years ago.
So if you look at your yearly wages for a year, no matter what kind of job you're having, for the most part, you basically, up until June or through the middle of June, is all going to the tax man.
Wow.
Everything you make. But that
is so obscene when you put it in those terms.
When you think about it like that. But there's a guy named Joe Bannister who used to be a special agent for the IRS, and in the late 90s he was, you know, driving around doing his special agenty things, and was listening to a AM radio show where the host had a guy on who was claiming you didn't have to pay federal income tax. And him being an IRS special agent, he was like, that's ridiculous. But he listened to the whole interview, and then he decided, well, I'm going to look into this. And sure as shit, he found you don't actually have to pay federal income tax. And so starting in 1999, this is a guy who was a special agent for the IRS. He stopped paying he quit his job and stopped paying federal income tax. Now, in 2003, he was raided by the FBI because he was also a CPA. And so he was helping someone who came to him for CPA services. And this guy had the idea that, well, since I don't have to pay a federal income tax, they actually owe me money for all the federal income tax that I have paid. So Joe Bannister was helping this guy get his money back, right? He was like, actually, I think you can do this. And so the feds raided him over falsifying tax documents, the laundry list of things they'll try to throw against you to get one to stick. He studied up for 6-8 months, went to court. He hired the best tax attorney there was, but he also kind of represented himself, and he beat the feds on everything that they came after him and his client for. And since 1999, he has never paid a dime in federal income tax. And he actually has a cool website where he actually, shows you exactly how to do it. But he's very upfront, and he says, look, expect to get taken for the ride at some point, though. They will try to come after you. But if you understand the law and you know what you're doing, then you can fight against it. He said, but it's probably going to cost you about $250,000.
And that's the thing, and that's what we're kind of seeing with Donald Trump right now is they're not necessarily planning on getting any of the stuff to stick. They're throwing a lot of stuff against the wall.
Yeah.
And if something does stick, great. But what they're doing is they're draining him dry. That's the new modern warfare. They don't have to assassinate you anymore. They can assassinate your character, or they could just tie you up. And that's the thing about it'll pan out in the justice system. No, it won't for the average man, because the average man can't afford it.
No.
Did
I mention that one word, sedition?
No, yeah.
Oh, dear. It's different when it's on the other foot, isn't it?
And I just found out about this guy. I forget what his organization's called, but he's an Iranian immigrant who came here in the late 70s, and he's never paid a dime in federal income tax. And he actually runs this kind of whole university kind of thing. It's not like a regular kind of college thing, but it's like he calls it a something university, where he teaches you all these different things about how he's never paid these taxes and other stuff. So it's pretty interesting. It's something to look into. And the thing is, all we would need is 3 to 5% of the population to decide on one specific year, hey, we're not doing it. And good luck coming and getting all of us.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, the way that they're printing money, it's very difficult to justify taking tax from us when they've got a wide open printing press.
Well, it's not,
and
even
it's devaluing everything that we earn anyway.
Yeah, well, that's one part of it. The other part of it is I'm tired of paying for Pakistani gender studies. I'm tired of paying for, sending how many billions of dollars a year to Israel and all these other foreign countries.
Yeah, Ukraine, leaving how many billions in Afghanistan.
And how many of those billions that went to Ukraine actually even got there? Most of them didn't.
Yeah. And we've just been very frivolous there. And let's not forget the 13 lives that were lost in the withdrawal.
In Afghanistan.
From Kabul.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that's a whole smoke screen too. We haven't really withdrawn from Afghanistan. We've got bases all over that place. Because they were all active and watching out over the weekend with the theater that we saw that played out in front of us.
That was an interesting show, wasn't it?
It was definitely a show. I don't believe any of it. There's a...
Now, I have actually seen the Iron Dome firsthand.
Well, yeah, I know that it works, and
it's impressive.
Yeah, but the thing is, so you watch a display like you saw this weekend, right? Where let's say they shot 100 of them, 97 of them were intercepted, and only I guess 3 of them landed outside of Duma or whatever, 3%. So it's just nothing, And then you couple that with what Trump said back in 2018, where when he took out that Iranian general or whoever it was that when he got Soleimani? He said that Iran had to retaliate because they had to save face with their people. But they called Trump before they did and said, hey, here's where we're going to shoot the missiles. Just make sure nobody's there and everything will, be fine. We're not actually attacking you.
Right.
So
saving face.
So we know that happened, but you see this impressive Iron Dome and these impressive Israeli defense mechanisms. But yeah, we're supposed to believe that a bunch of guys on fucking paragliders or whatever, homemade go-karts with wings, whatever you want to call them, somehow, assaulted them for 7 hours and all of their defenses were defeated. Bullshit.
And that's probably because that Ashdod, Gaza area, and I was just off there, is probably the most heavily armed with counter-offensive weaponry that you can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, all sorts of bells and whistles go off if like a cat gets too close to the dam.
Oh, yeah. So it does make you wonder where you saw that display over the weekend, which was impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's impressive.
But it does beg that question. How did power gliders get through?
I don't think it begs any question. They were allowed to come through to start these shenanigans. Look, I think that the world's power base that, you know, that these corrupt leaders of ours work
Pay your
for,
taxes. Pay your taxes.
I think they realize they've lost control, that too much of the population's waking up. Too many people are realizing what's really going on here. And so they're going to start. We're going to war. War is coming.
Well, I mean, that's coming. I think we've said that a couple of times, and it's actually fairly inevitable. But haven't you noticed over the last, I say few months, but it's probably the last year, the social media meme traffic being so counter taxation, and it's very much there's an underlying sort of movement there that is so discrediting our tax system that it's going to get traction at some point.
I mean, I think it already is. You're seeing it in small ways. I mean, look at Franklin County's a good example with the schools that are closing, and they're claiming there's not enough tax money. There's not enough, when everybody's looking around like, I'm giving everything I've got. You know what I mean? Like,
they've still got 60 million. Maybe not all of that is, openly available, but 60 million in reserve. No. Yeah, that's not how that works.
It's not adding up.
No, of course not.
You know, and then you start to get into the all the social programs and everything else. And one of the things that's really shined a light on all this around the country is the illegal invasion with all these people. Finally, the African American population is realizing, wait a minute, we've been duped. You know, I mean, look at what's going on. Yeah. Chicago is a good example of this. They are raising hell at these meetings in Chicago. They're chanting stuff like "Never vote blue again," "Red, red." All like it's completely blown up. But I think it's supposed to. You know, look, if you're of the mind like I am that there is a grand plan for the world and that was set in motion 100, 150, 200 years ago, and this is the culmination of it, then you can't have the United States be what it has been. It has to kind of be destroyed, and it's much easier to destroy it from the inside out than some attacking force, as many world leaders figured out a long time ago. You know, what was it? That one Russian leader in like the 70s was like, "We're going to take over the United States and never fire a shot." You know.
I think the Chinese are very much of that. That mindset. If that may have been a Chinese quotation.
Yeah, it may have
Russian, but nonetheless, it's those.
And look what they did. I mean, they've subverted the education system. Mm-hmm. They've bought and paid for all of our, representatives. I mean,
and their offspring and siblings.
I mean, we've got representatives out, like Marjorie Taylor Greene went on Steve Bannon's show last week and said, "I think Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is being blackmailed." You know, Tim Burchett, the representative out of Tennessee, was on Fox News a month or two ago saying that there's all sorts of sexual blackmail going on in Washington, D.C., and you better not, as a junior member of Congress, be going to these parties they invite you to, because they'll drug your drink and stick you in a room with a 12-year-old, and guess what? I mean, but that's what's happening. And these aren't conspiracy theories anymore. I was looked at like I was batshit crazy 5, 6, 7 years ago for saying that this was what was going on. And now it's just out in the open. I mean, look at the P. Diddy scandal. He was blackmailing politicians, businessmen. Same operation Epstein was running, but from an African-American community standpoint.
So what has happened with that? Because I haven't really heard much on it since the initial weekend.
I mean, more and more information just keeps coming out that it's, everything that was out in those documents is true. And now people are digging up like old depositions from older cases that didn't necessarily have to deal with this, but where people were talking about P. Diddy and him doing these things. I mean, it's been known in that kind of inner circle black community. Cat Williams was out there talking about P. Diddy 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago and about what he was doing. You had Cat Williams in a stand-up special in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, talking about going to a Hollywood house party and sticking his head in the wrong door and seeing two black guys going at it. It's been long time rumored that Quincy Jones and Clive Davis, as to if you were going to make it in this industry, you were going to bend over and take it.
Oh my goodness.
That's why all these rappers, they're all gay. Most of 95% of these rappers are all homos. They are. I mean, it's funny to think about it, but it's actually true, man. They were all bent over and turned out. That's what happened. I mean, it's crazy, but
I mean, that goes for pretty much anybody in Hollywood, though, right? Anybody in the music industry.
Anyone in DC, dare I say?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, politics is just Hollywood for ugly people. So, I mean, that's what it is. Hollywood for ugly people, man.
Oh, that is a T-shirt. That is a T-shirt. That's brilliant.
And you've got like the kid stuff coming out with that Nickelodeon documentary that was Quiet on Set or whatever. I've known about that Dan Snyder stuff for 10 years. And that Quiet on the Set docu-series doesn't even get into, they focus mostly on the Brian Peck guy, who was disgusting. But Dan Snyder has long been rumored to be the father of Jamie Lynn Spears' kid. That's Britney Spears' younger sister, who had a Nickelodeon show. And she got pregnant when she was like 16.
Mm-hmm.
We know that he was having fake auditions for fake shows and getting the kids to come in front of their parents and take their shoes off and do all sorts of weird shit with their feet. That's why Nickelodeon's logo for a while was that foot. He was into feet. And look at poor Amanda Bynes. I mean, she was say what you want about her now, but she was super talented as a kid. She sang, she danced, she did it all. She was a regular little Shirley Temple. And, I mean, she's so messed up. But speaking of that, Shirley Temple, her and her mom would take her around to these auditions and stuff. This is old Hollywood stuff. And they'd walk into an audition room and have 5 guys there, and all of them be sitting there butt naked. I'm not even kidding. And they just laughed it off and whatever back then. But yeah, these kids were tortured.
When people hear that for the first time, you kind of just go, "Oh my God!" And when we had our first show, when I met you on the first show, I just went afterwards with Billy. I just went, "My God, Stuart's batshit crazy. He's gone down so many damn rabbit holes." I said, but when I make that statement, then he's joined all the dots together. And what he's done is expose something that I thought was a conspiracy or batshit crazy, joined all the dots together, and every time you've been proven right. And I may joke about it, and I mean my facial expressions, which one day will be caught on camera, We'll have that purple smoke exploding out the back of my head, and it's just like, oh, here we go again. Stuart's got me on another one, and it's just like, and then 6 months later, bloody hell, Stuart was spot on.
Well, while we have 3 white middle-aged men sitting around here talking,
I just love the way you put the dots together.
You kind of see it in some of those guys, like, well, not from that perspective, but from the people who seem to be outsiders. I guess like somebody like 50 Cent, who's been calling it out for quite some time now. And the reason he has been calling it out because he is clean, because he was huge at one point in time and then just marked right off and nobody, heard anything. I guess, there are some people sit there and tell him, no, I ain't doing this.
That story from that Drinking Bro. Have you seen the clip of him on that Drinking Bros podcast?
No, but go ahead.
50 Cent is on this Drinking Bros podcast. And I don't think 50 Cent he's not a guy that goes around getting like messed up, but on this Drinking Bros podcast, everybody ends up getting drunk, right? So he got fairly lit up, and he's like, I'll tell you a story about Diddy. And I guess he was at like something or something, and he met him, and Diddy came up to him and was like, he's like, man, we got to work together. And he does like this really effeminate voice for Diddy. It's really funny. But he says, hey, we got to work together, blah, blah, blah. what you doing tomorrow? And 50's like, I ain't doing nothing, whatever. And he's like, well, why don't you let me take you shopping tomorrow? And 50 Cent is just like, what the fuck? Some man trying to take me shopping, and it just calls him out completely. He's like, yeah, he's a, he's a homo. He says it right there on that podcast, and that was like a year or two ago. But yeah, I mean, some of these rap guys have been calling this stuff out for forever. Then you start looking at like Diddy's like roster of talent over the years, and the ones who left, like I guess this guy Mace or something. I don't know the rap world that well, but one of the guys who was pretty successful, this guy Mace, he left and went and joined some like Christian convent farm thing. And that's happened to several of these guys that have been involved with Diddy that I think eventually were like, this shit ain't worth it. I'm out of here. And just like went so far the other direction.
Isolationism.
Well, yeah, just to like repent for the shit that they were made to do is my guess,
Wow.
But, yeah, I mean, that inside Hollywood music world has known this was going on.
Well, when you go back to the 80s, there's been a bunch of rappers, you see the videos of them talking, and I can't remember exactly who it was I saw, but they're talking about, basically what it was they came in and told them, it was like, okay, we need to fill up these prisons. Private prisons are an industry, it's a business, and we need the rap music to do this. So by you as the rappers that are pushing people in this direction, then you get stock in these prisons. And that was their payment. And I mean, like you think back in the 90s about, somebody like Biggie and Tupac, they were the two. Now, Biggie grew up on the streets doing crack, selling it, all kind. I mean, he grew up in a rough life, but Tupac, his parents were very well educated. He went to like Juilliard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he wasn't some street thug. He was very poetic but two different worlds. And so, there's plenty of them out there. Maybe the ones who don't play ball. Maybe Biggie wasn't willing to play ball.
He worked
and maybe he was Diddy's sacrifice to get to where he was at.
He worked with Diddy.
Because Diddy, they were the ones who come up together.
Yeah.
And then he got the big movie, got all the stuff, and then Diddy became huge
right after
because at the time Biggie was bigger. Biggie was definitely
way bigger.
Biggie was everything.
Biggie and Tupac were the two biggest things, and it was that East Coast West Coast rivalry thing that they set up. But I mean, I truly believe all of that was a complete work. That was a complete show. Because you're right. I mean, the powers that be sent in their let's just, be honest about it, they're Jewish people and sent them in and corrupted that whole rap game. I mean, they were all working for white Jews. I mean, that's who runs the record industry. And, they set that whole thing up. And,
is that why you think Suge Knight had such a rough time at it and they were constantly always after him? Was he somebody that was like a rebel label, or was he playing ball? Because he's in jail.
Well, I mean, he is now, so he obviously did something, but they kept him out of jail for a long time. So eventually you become, it either gets to a point where they have to get rid of you. You're worth more dead than alive, which is like the Michael Jackson, Prince, those sorts. Or
Toby Keith,
or
R.I.P.
Or, you're maybe not even worth killing like a Suge, and just who really believes Suge Knight? You know what I mean? Throw his ass in jail.
Wow, that's
because look, Death Row Records was set up with CIA cocaine money from all the trafficking in the 80s. Literally, that's where the money, from Rick Ross, but it came from actually the CIA. The CIA set up Death Row Records, and they set up a bunch of the other ones too. And it was all to corrupt generations of kids. And they went to MTV and they told them, no, you're going to pull this rock music and you're going to glorify gangster rap.
Wow.
This was all.
That's corruption.
It was all laid out on purpose.
I hadn't heard that one though, which is wild because I didn't think about that. But back in the day, yeah, MTV was solid. It was just good rock music.
Yeah, and they had the MTV rap show or whatever. But no, in the early 90s, they went to those executives and said, "This is what you're gonna do, or we'll put our people in."
That purple smoke is beginning to creep out, Stewie.
Well, that's how it happens, though.
This is a part of a bigger conversation, and Simon, you're somebody who has hung out with Phil Collins, you've hung out with Jimmy Buffett, you've hung out with Paul McCartney, and I don't know if we have talked about the McCartney thing on here before. I know you and I have, but whether that's the actual Paul McCartney or not, because the Beatles are so big, you move somebody else in behind him. I think we talked about that on the after show last time, but you've been around these people and stuff before. You've kind of been in the industry. There obviously is a lot more behind the scenes, a lot more dark stuff going on than we realize. Maybe not with all of them.
Well, and I think that's, I mean, from what Stewie is saying, that is at the higher echelons of the industry, and at the lower echelon of the industry, you don't see it. You've got a talent. You're just trying to make a name. Open for someone big. Whatever.
Sometimes you do see it though, because if in fact Paul McCartney is a lookalike, then whoever Paul McCartney is now is definitely in on it, so they're definitely part of that upper echelon. It's like, somewhere you have to play ball in for a reason. And I guess on the surface level, when you're thinking about this stuff, yes, it sounds absolutely insane and nuts. But when you really start thinking about it, when you really see how social media has begun to brainwash people, how video games have brainwashed kids and everything, and you pull yourself back, you're like, well, yes, it makes absolute sense that everybody that's in control, that's feeding you this bullshit now, would have every reason to do this all in the past. And what's the best way to do it? Well, find somebody and offer them the world. And if they take it, then they follow orders and they get wealth and fame. It's the Faustian deal. You get wealth and fame and all this kind of stuff, but they own you and they have reasons to own you. Or if you don't take the deal, then you just go back to irrelevance. But if you take the deal and then turn on them, well, then you get the Britney Spears.
Yeah.
You get, Michael Jackson, you get
murder suicided. I mean,
I'm not.
That's the thing. You're only going to make it to a certain level unless they identify something to you and offer you the world.
But you're never going to get it. The Britney Spears thing is, I don't know how it got to that point. She's batshit crazy.
I think she is nuts, but she was driven nuts.
Oh,
She was on Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and we know what they do to these kids. They ritually abuse them. They sexually abuse them. They do all sorts of weird demonic stuff with them. They corrupt these kids. They brainwash them.
And it's because Hollywood pushes a narrative, the music industry pushes a narrative, and that narrative gets pushed out to the population who, for the most part, we're dumb overall. Yeah. We got a lot of smart people. We got a lot of people who have been awoken to it, but overall the population is pretty dumb. I think COVID showed that.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people that are followers that don't question things, that just do as they're told. And they know these things, so why not use these famous people to push their agenda? And that's exactly how it goes. They push it and they think it's cool.
Yeah. Well, but look at that the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse that she was, the class that she was in is a perfect example of this. It was her, Christina Aguilera, and Justin Timberlake. Three of the biggest stars of the past 20 years.
And definitely in the early 2000s.
We're all identified and groomed from a very young age to be what they're doing now. Now, has Britney Spears gone nuts? Yeah, because I believe she was probably sexually abused from a very young age. Christina Aguilera has had her battles with, I'm assuming, drugs, weight, all sorts of issues. Justin Timberlake being a guy, yeah, he walks around with hot women. More than likely, he's gay. I mean, that would be my guess. My guess is Leonardo DiCaprio's gay.
Well, with now
just because they show up with a supermodel everywhere doesn't mean they're into women.
So help me out with this one though, and this is why I have to play devil's advocate and ask a question.
There she goes. Blink,
with the LGBTQAI plus 123 ABC agenda. Wouldn't it seem, because everybody in Hollywood right now they are treating, a lot of those are treating their children like accessories. Like there's some of them out there that have 3 trans children, which is the odds of that are astronomical. You know what I mean? Like so why wouldn't they just come out anyway? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't Tom Cruise come out? Because that's been alluded to him and John Travolta over the years. Like it would benefit them even more right now at this point. Or do they have or do they have to continue to sell this male persona to make movies?
There you go.
This is my plus P angle.
Plus P angle?
Yeah, my plus P angle. LGBTABC, whatever, plus P.
What's the plus P? What's the plus P?
I'm going to get shot down for this one. I bet it made me laugh. And it was plus Pufter.
Yeah, I think they just because they're positioned to sell a narrative to a certain group of people, right? Justin Timberlake is positioned. Travolta, Tom Cruise and Travolta are almost to the point now where they're almost irrelevant in this whole thing moving forward. But I mean, look, there have been enough masseuses and other people come out over the years saying John Travolta's gay that I don't need him to come out.
Well, I mean, South Park did the whole episode, and he had R. Kelly in the closet, Tom Cruise, and John Travolta. The whole you haven't watched that show, go back and watch it.
Well, and my guess is that they're bi, too. You know what I mean?
Well, honestly, it's probably one of these things where your entire life, not only you've been groomed, but when you're groomed sometimes sexually, it's shown and through evidence that it tends to turn you into one of those deviants as well.
Yeah.
So it gets to the point to where it's not about morals anymore. It's just about getting off. And at some point in time, women, you can't do it with them anymore, or you might have to do it for a dude just to get a job. And it gets to the point to where it's not a godly thing. And that's what sex should be. Sex should be something between somebody that you love and care about, and you're willing and able to face the consequences of whatever, having sex may come, whether it's a child, like it should be reserved. And
but hasn't it got so? It's got to a level of deviance.
Well, that's what it is. They just are so bored. They have to keep.
But they're trying to raise the level of deviance to.
They're chasing the dragon
to be acceptable.
They're chasing the dragon. That's all they're doing.
But they want it to be accepted.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a huge crime. Deviance is deviance. I don't care how you want to wrap it up. You can roll it in bacon. It's still deviance. Well, if you roll it in bacon, it may be a bit different because bacon's lovely.
It's delicate deviance.
Just lovely smoked apple bacon. Delightful. Anyway, I digress. But, to me, what they're wanting is acceptance of this new level of deviance.
Yeah.
And as, well brought up, gentlemen that we are, we should maintain our standards.
Well,
and that's the problem. They got a problem with us going, actually, no, we don't accept that shit, so you can knob off.
Yeah.
And that's all you've got to do is say, actually, no, give me your pronouns. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, thank you. I don't play that game.
It's nutty.
I'm just not gonna tolerate this.
Yeah. I mean, and if people don't think this stuff's happening, like Terry Crews, the actor, the big black guy who played, was it Macho Camacho, the president of
Mountain Dew?
Yeah, the guy from
Idiocracy.
Yeah,
great movie, by the way. If you have not watched Idiocracy,
it's what we're living.
Yeah,
so he came out during the whole Me Too thing, and he was the only guy to come out and say this that I know of, and he was like, "Yeah, I had several producers try to." Get me to do things with men for jobs. So it wasn't just that was happening to women. And then you had Bob Dylan, the singer-songwriter. This was on 60 Minutes in an interview with Ed Bradley from 15 years ago now, where, Bob Dylan was old then. He was still out touring and doing all this. And Ed Bradley asked him, he's like, why do you still, you've accomplished everything.
I know this interview.
And that. He asked him, well, why do you still do this? And Bob Dylan kind of looks around a little bit and he says, he said, I made a deal a long time ago that I would continue to do this. And you don't want to cross the people I made a deal with. He was basically like saying, yeah, I made a deal, maybe not an actual horned devil, but like the cabal or whatever you want to call them. He signed on the dotted line with them a long time ago, and the deal is that he would do this until the day he died.
Yeah, you're not going to the crossroads somewhere in Mississippi and meeting the devil and getting to play the guitar or whatever, but you were shaking hands and doing business with people who either have evil intentions or may be a part of the cult, because you see a lot of videos out there of all these rappers and stuff who are laid out in the floor, and some of them have talked about it, that when they come into a room, sometimes before they get a big rap deal, they got to go into this room, and they said there's this big pentagon drawn on the floor and candles and stuff everywhere. Can you speak to that any?
I mean, I don't know exactly about that, but I know, like I mentioned earlier, that with Quincy Jones and Clive Owen, you weren't going anywhere unless you've been over that recording console and let them have your way.
What's
and going along with that is all sorts of different satanic.
Tie this in now with what appears to be a trend of some of the major artists where they're selling their library to whoever.
Well, some of them are getting outbid.
Well, and what is that about? I mean, Fleetwood Mac.
And look, here's something I want to get
Bob
into.
Dylan actually I believe, was the last one to sell his whole library. What is that about?
This is a great segue right here. I want to talk about this one because here lately, who over the winter was the biggest sop, quote unquote, in the country?
Taylor Swift.
Okay. People are like,
I've got a bit of a soft spot for Taylor Swift, by the way.
People want to hate on Taylor Swift, right? People want to hate on her, but Taylor Swift actually called out Klaus Schwab. Not Klaus Schwab. It was who's the other one? Soros. A Soros-funded organization came in and bought up her entire record label, bought up all of her music, and they outbid her basically for her own stuff. And her, instead of sitting there and cowtailing down it, she came out and said, well, I'll just go back through and remaster and record every single song I've ever done, and I'll re-release them, and your investment will be worthless.
Yeah.
And basically they turned the records back over to her for almost nothing because
they were worthless.
So when people out here, they're trying to get people to hate on Taylor Swift and on the conservative side, on the right side of things, but she's actually one of them who have called them out. And she doesn't really get super political. Like the hate for her, I don't like her music or anything, but the hate for her seems very, very unnecessary for conservatives out. You know what I mean?
I just don't like her.
No, I don't care for her either.
I think she's a phony.
Well,
I don't believe that she's written most of those songs because I know what goes into writing a song. I know what, there's no way she was writing these songs at age 14. I know for a fact
she's a prodigy?
No.
Is it possible?
And I'll tell you why I know
considering
too as well.
Considering that her dad bought her first record contract and that she is as manufactured as the Beatles were.
I have family. I have family that's in the music world. She's married into it and stuff, and she used to go around to all the tours because her husband worked. You might know him, Key. Husband worked some soundboards or something.
Sound for
some really good bands and stuff. And she was telling me this is a decade ago or something that you go to a festival back in before Taylor Swift got to be what she is today, and she, my cousin would tell me that live she is not very good at all without all the help and all the auto tune and all that kind of noise. She is not very talented at all. No. And that was the thing back then. But if you play ball and you do as you're told, but how far?
She signed on the dotted line, man. That's and this is what it gets you. And at some point, look, she's had her little forays into trans people are people too, and all that nonsense that these people spew out. Eventually, she will be rolled out in a major way to have a major effect. My guess is, I don't think it'll be for this election. They're not going to waste her for that. There's no helping this moron that they've pushed it on us. But I think that at some point she'll be rolled out, and it may be in like a way to like calm all the sheep and all the masses into accepting the new system they try to force on us. It may be that if the social credit score and all that gets rolled out, and here's Taylor Swift, the poster child for sign up for the new CDBC or central bank digital currency. And I don't know how they're going to use her, but they will use her at some point, and she will have to say yes.
And here's what we went into on the last show when you talk about that.
Well, more purple smoke.
Damn. Like, what do you think the plan is? Because we kind of talked about this on the last show a little bit, and my thought is that at this point in time, it seems to me that they brought in all these immigrants. They're going to be used for electoral votes and probably to shift Texas blue and pretty much not this election, but in 8 years, 4 years, it's not really going to, whenever the next census comes out, it's not really going to matter anymore. And most likely, either Biden, when he loses, either grants amnesty all of immediately, and even if Trump reverses it or does it, the only way to get all of these immigrants out of here and efficiently and fast is in train cars. And do you think he's going to do that because of the optics? You know what I mean? But that's what they want. They want people, and here's my theory, is they want people begging, and whether Trump knows it or not, he's going to be the guy that comes in, and then the Democrats are going to sit back and they're going to kind of egg it on. Well, yeah, go in here and be that authoritarian, clean things up, be like the Abraham Lincoln, bring the country back together by authoritarian measures. You know what I mean? Like, people will beg for the crime to stop, for the injustices to stop, all this stuff for the criminal. So they come in. And they've been keeping tabs. Don't think they've had drone footage and camera footage of all these people from the Summer of Love. They've been keeping tabs on all these people, I think they've been letting them do all this stuff. That way, when Trump comes into office, he goes back in, he cleans up everything, and then the Dems come in behind him and say, look, he did it all in terrible ways. We need to be back in office so everything's cleaned up. And the Dems now have control again fully.
I mean, maybe. Look, my guess is, I don't think they could steal the election in the same way they stole it last time. Technically, they can.
Well, even at this point in time, though, I think it's beyond the ability to cheat.
No, it's not, because of the way that these computer systems work.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great documentary called "Let My People Go" that Professor David,
you back it up with
that Professor Dave Clements put out. It's a little over 2 hours. You can get it for free on Rumble. You may find it on YouTube. They take it down as soon as somebody puts it up, but it walks through the whole way that they're able to do this now, because all the poll books are electronic. The voter rolls are electronic. These Dominion, ES&S, and Hart InterCivic machines can all be pre-programmed to do things, but also with just sticking a thumb drive into it, that thumb drive can be programmed to automatically shift whatever they need to shift. And because they have all this real-time monitoring of the actual real votes that are coming in, they can do things like shift. So like a week before the election, they can activate or deactivate hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people off and onto the voter rolls. And then a week after the election, change those things back. So then when you actually go to look, you don't see any evidence of the crime, except for the fact that those manipulations were done. There's also, they know exactly who has voted and who hasn't voted. So as long as they can say that there's enough people there to have actually voted this way, they can manipulate this in any way they want without doing anything.
Here's a way to counter. This should have been done a long time ago. But if you as a voter can check your vote and then authenticate, or you've seen that it's been switched somehow, at what point? Because I've heard several examples of that, the vote being switched or being switched. I've heard of it from several people.
Yeah,
where they said, "Well, hang on, it showed when I checked, it showed that I voted for someone who I didn't put my check mark."
No, they can change it.
So at that point, it's then down to the individual, because let's face it, most of the folks, there's a lot of folks don't vote. For the votes, for the folks that do vote, which is a reducing majority. It's a reducing majority, even though they'll tell you this was a mass turnout. If everyone was to check their voting record and then have the opportunity to say something has gone wrong here, then you're taking that personal responsibility to say, I'm checking that my vote was counted under what I put the check mark against. Wouldn't it be prudent for everyone to swing around and say, for all the folks that did that check, hang about, something went wrong?
You don't even need all that. It's very simple. Go back to paper ballots. You go in, you check. But on a paper ballot, then you have three people counting. You have a Democrat, a Republican, and a German Baptist. Because as you know, we are the number one podcast in the German Baptist community.
We are.
So have one of them there, because they're not involved either way, and they're going to be honest about it. That's all you need. You don't need any of the rest of this.
But if you check your vote,
I agree.
If you check your vote, and you should be able to do that in this digital age, where did my vote? Where was it? Was it correct? And if you can check it and go, actually, no, how did that get swapped? That's not what I voted for.
I know you could check and see if you voted and if it was counted. but I'm not sure if you can actually get
That's
the
what
info.
we need to do.
Well, you do, but here's the problem. Let's say 50% of the eligible voting population votes, right?
If we're lucky.
If we're lucky.
Yep.
Yeah. The problem is the other 50%, because they can use those ballots and those people's names and say that they voted. And that has been going on now. So people did some canvassing in different spots after 2020. Okay.
So now we're saying that the people that don't vote are actually the problem because their vote can actually be manipulated.
Vote is being manipulated. So like after 2020, people, they were going around to different neighborhoods where, you know, they get these printouts that say, okay, you know, this house voted, this house voted, this house voted. And they go around and they're like, no, we didn't vote. We didn't go vote. Or even like, hey, may I ask you who you did vote for? Yeah, I actually voted Republican. Well, this vote went, this district went 93-7 Democrat.
Right.
And they have, on a street of 100 people, they have 70 of them say they voted Republican. So these numbers are impossible. And outside of Philadelphia, where they did some of this canvassing, there were neighborhoods that they were going into. They were, you know, African American neighborhoods, and these people were telling them that they had been voting red since 2012, and they were still having 95%, saying that these areas were 95% blue. So they're just manipulating, they're changing votes,
right?
They're using blank voters. Like, for example, I can go online and just order official ballot paper, like from ES&S Dominion and Hart InterCivic, and just have it sent to me. So then if I can get the image,
yeah,
I can print up as many of these damn things as I want. Now, I think that that's like the least of our worries, okay? Because the people that are doing the cheating have access to the ballot paper. The problem is these machines.
We've got to get in front.
The problem are these
the
machines.
Cheaters. Well, the machines, yeah, but we've got to get in front of the process and the machines.
Well, luckily, over the past 4 years, a lot of people have.
But would it not be okay? So we can eliminate. Let's assume if we go with the 50-50, 50% vote, 50% don't. You can deal with the 50% by saying those that did vote, it is your civic duty, which you have taken on board, to vote. Let's add another layer to that and say, well, perhaps it is also your civic duty to make sure that your vote was, you know, counted in the right column.
Well, let's say that 35%.
Because everyone will go into a voting booth, go, yeah, bang, whatever it is, drop it in, and that's the last they think about it. And they're not even considering if their voting record has been misrepresented. Yeah. So if that was added to the civic duty of voting, which they've already accepted, that wouldn't be a hard thing. Now, what you're saying now is the 50% that don't vote is the problem for shenanigans.
It's both, but yeah. So let's say 50% vote. Well, out of the 100% of people that vote, let's say that 75 of them vote, 75% vote red at this point, right? Which I believe is about the right number if they were counting things accurately, okay? The problem is, there's another 100% out there that matches the non-voters match the voters in number. Yep. So if that swath they assign 90% blue to, we still lose.
Absolutely.
You see, so it's
but that's a falsehood.
It is,
because
but
it's been manipulated.
We've been living in a falsehood for a long time. I don't believe there have been real elections for decades in this country. And in most places around the world.
I'm tempted to agree.
I mean, look at Canada, look at France, look at all these places. I mean, look at England, for example. That's a perfect example. It's all Pakistanis running around, running everything.
Pretty much.
You know what I mean? You're not going to sell me on this.
I mean, Khan has, and no one will have heard of Khan. He's the mayor of London. And I don't really have a good deal to say about it.
No. The same thing's going on in Ireland. The same thing's going on in Scotland.
Yep.
The same thing. I mean, look at these anti-free speech laws that just went into effect in Scotland.
Portugal.
Yeah, where you can't say anything or they're going to come and throw you in jail. It's not just about the Holocaust anymore. You can't ask why they had a swimming pool at Auschwitz. You can't ask why, there was a camp store. You can't ask why the English were allowed to have a soccer team that played every weekend. You can't ask that in a lot of countries in Europe, but not just now.
It's football.
I'm not allowed to say anything about a trans person now in those countries, or I'm going to get thrown in jail.
That's just absolutely ridiculous.
Speaking of football, it was an exciting weekend in the Premier League.
I don't follow. I'm following Harlequins in the championship, and they're into the semi-finals.
Okay.
I couldn't be more stoked. It's how you're made. There's old Billy over here just going, "Oh, that bloody English idiot."
But but all these things are because of bullshit voting systems that are completely based on, falsities, false narratives, and then they use the media to back up their lies and their stealing of these elections and try to gaslight you into thinking that, no, it is 70% of the population that thinks I'm a hateful bigot because I think boys should be competing with girls in sports. You know what I mean?
So do you think,
it's like,
you think the cities aren't as blue as they're claiming?
No.
But so they use that too.
Look, I think if you did a real vote, California would be stark red. I mean,
I still got an issue.
Of course, you have these Upper East Side hipsters and these liberal ass women that have bought in and been brainwashed into this stuff. But for the most part, I think I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it because you go talk to anybody out here in real life and they all think there's something going on. They all agree with way more of what we're saying than what they're saying.
The truth is coming out.
It is.
Please.
And that's why these wars are starting. Because when all else fails, you take them to war.
Yeah, but then the new guy on the block has to inherit that.
Well, yeah, but they don't care because they want to burn down everything because they want a complete reset. This is the great reset we're living through right now. They want a complete reset. They want to drive everyone out of New York City so they can rebuild it into a smart AI tracking dystopian nightmare. They want people out. They want everything. The board wiped clear.
I'm with you. I get what you're saying. I really do. But when we, Monday morning quarterback it, and we say it's they. Who are they?
I actually thought about this after the last time you asked me.
Because that's the go back. That's the fallback. It's a they argument, and when you've got to confront they as the argument, it becomes difficult to go beyond the conspiracy to the facts.
Well, look,
I'm playing devil's advocate here because I already know the answer.
So if you dig back into the ancient stuff, there's 13 bloodline families, and most of them have names that we don't pronounce or have never heard of, like the Medicis and I don't even remember them all. But those families have all split off into different factions now. And in our today's world, you have what I would call the House of Rothschild, all right, that has splintered off into a lot of different things.
The Habsburgs.
You've got the Rockefellers, and a couple other American dynasties that are all at the top of this.
Carnegie's.
And they've created all of these different, created all these different entities like the International Monetary Fund or the World Economic Forum, which is headed by Schwab.
The whole Bilderberg element.
The Bilderberg element. And they also are the same small group of people that sit on top of every major corporation. All right.
Vanguard.
Yeah. BlackRock. State Street. But even like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi.
Their tentacles are long.
Yeah. And if you look at the board members of all of these major corporations, they're all on each other's boards. So it's actually a way smaller group of people that sit on all of these boards of the Fortune 500 companies, it's probably a group of like less than 100 people that intertwine into all of these different boards that run all of these.
And they all disguise themselves now as philanthropists.
That's a good one. Yeah, like Bill Gates.
And I was sitting here when I was listening to Stuart, and he's very articulate, when he speaks. And I was just sitting here thinking about when we finally get the studio set in place and get the cameras going at the cabin and having this conversation where the camera pans to Stuart and it goes to Simon with the purple smoke and goes back to him and stuff. And you add a little bit of eerie music and a 45-second clip about what he just did. I mean, it's going to get hundreds of thousands of views. You know what I mean? Like it's that simple. Got some fun, exciting stuff coming up here in the very near future where I think the cameras are going to become a possibility, but to also, help push us in that direction. You can go to patreon.com/get on tap. And for only $10 a day minimum, now you can always give more. You can give, $5 a month, $10 a month, but $3 is the minimum. You get our Patreon page where you get after shows where we'll kind of go at it a little bit harder and maybe talk about some things that are a little more R-rated. Subscriber only. You get our shows early typically when we start getting them. We're going to start getting shows in. We've got a lot of good shows here lined up in the very near future. We're going to start lining them up, knocking them out. We're going to have a bunch in the bank for you all to listen to for subscribers. And it's only $10 a day, and it really helps us out, helps us get to the point to cameras where you can see these interactions where Stuart's blowing Simon's mind over here. We want to get those clips out there because people everywhere are going to enjoy them.
And you could load then, because like the exact thing I was just talking about, there are diagrams that have all of this displayed and how it's all tangled and intertwined together and run from a central small location.
Exactly. So,
but it takes an inquisitive mind to even open up and receive that information.
Well, the thing he's trying to say is if we're up there in a cabin and we're doing an episode, and of course we hook up to Starlink, we got really good internet up there, and we do go live, then as we're going live on Rumble, YouTube, or whatever we're doing, whoever's doing the kind of production side of the show can just pull up on the screen. So if you're at your house watching it, you pull up on the screen exactly what Stuart's talking about. It pulls up the links, pulls up the articles and things like that. So all those things are going to be happening. All those things are possible if you go to patreon.com/get on tap for just $10 a day minimum. Or if you want to give a one-time thing, you can go to get on tap at Venmo or Cash App and give a one-time donation. Every little bit helps. We're putting it towards, everything we do here and putting this stuff together. We got a really incredible weekend coming up. We're going up to Simon's and we're doing our annual State of Appalachia episode where we're bringing our good friend Smokey the Appalachia Stanley back down. Our buddy Chip Slate's coming in from being libertarian. We're going to have a couple other people up there. It's going to be a really good time. Going to grill some burgers and make it a mini event, not quite Spike, but it's going to be a nice little mini event to kind of get the blood flowing and stuff. And hopefully here in the next couple of months, we'll be moved up there permanently as a studio to where we have the cameras, we have the angles, we have a guy who can sit down and do the production. You know what I mean?
That sounds as though we're actually going to have to script some of our stuff, and that scares the crap out of me.
Well, not necessarily script, but if we're going to, bring Stuart on and we know what we're going to talk about, maybe you don't necessarily have to script it. Joe Rogan's guys doesn't script it. They just, they're going along speaking, he said, Jamie, pull it up. Yeah. So, you just say, hey, go over there and pull it up, and it comes up on the screen. Of course, we've got a TV in the cabin. It's also showing us, and it's showing what we're looking at. So every little bit helps. And I know, look, some of you people, you go out to Boland's and you get a hot dog and a beer a couple days a week. You might go to Starbucks and get an $8 drink. You're supporting local here. Just because we're not a storefront, we're still local. So that $10 a day really, that's all we're asking for minimum. But the more subscribers we get, the higher up in the, profiles we go. And it really does help. So thank everybody for that. Good, fun stuff coming up here in the very near future. But that's how you can help us get this stuff when I'm looking at y'all going back and forth. And I'm having these visions and they're going off because this is very interesting stuff. And to see people's reactions to it, is something we can monetize.
It adds an element.
It really does. Because you want to see somebody that's genuine. You can talk all day and you kind of sound loony, but if you're actually seeing it and you can make little clips of it, then when you go back and listen to the whole show, you might not watch the whole show, but you'll listen to it just off a clip. So, but it's fascinating, all this stuff. I kind of wanted to go into this since this has come out today. And this was a big thing we talked about a couple of weeks ago, because as we know, Simon is a seaman.
He's
Can
covered
you
in
rephrase
semen
that,
or
please?
what?
Can you rephrase that? Really?
He loves semen? Is that what it was?
Oh, God.
Like our military apparently does now.
From all accounts.
But and having Simon on board of this show for the past year and a half or so has been
Hey,
really
we did
good.
get that scoop with that catastrophe up in Baltimore.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was getting ready to go into right here. It's good having Simon on the show because as somebody who is a sea captain, it was nice having him on here to talk about the Suez Canal incident we had about a year ago. Remember where it got kind of twisted now, kind of twisted sideways, and but the Baltimore thing was really interesting too, and it was pretty fresh when we had a big conversation about it. And since then, I've kind of seen a couple videos. When you watch it sped up, it really does look like they made a turn straight into the pillar. Now, apparently today it came out that the FBI is now opening up an investigation into foul play, I guess.
Oh, I think so. I mean,
I think something's going on for sure. I know there was a small clip on Zero Hedge that was talking about, there being a catastrophic electronic failure. And that's exactly what I said was that when it first happened, because we got it on the next day. I think we put a show out the next day. And I said, for all these vessel blackouts, there is a very serious, and it was electronics, an electronic problem, to have a vessel-wide blackout. Because everything is electronic controlled, whether it's electronics over diesel engines, whether it's over generators, whether it's over hydraulics, whatever it may be, everything is electronics over. And to get a vessel blackout, which is extremely unusual, particularly in confined water, for that to happen, there's a sequence of events that needs investigating, and that's all I'll say. But it was a significant electronic failure of their control systems that blacked out that vessel.
Now, that same ship had hit something else back in 2016 in Belgium, like another bridge or another boat or something. And if I'm right, it was either weeks or months before had been flagged for having major electronical problems that were not up to code or something along those lines.
That's absolutely possible.
And so, yeah, I mean, just from watching the video, you could tell that something happens to where
sure.
it just goes complete. But if you watch the video slowed down, Billy talked about speeding the video up. If you watch it slowed down, I think you can see charges going off on other pillars of that bridge.
I've seen those.
Have you seen that? What is your opinion on that? I've seen those,
and to me, the bridge not only is a means of transportation across the waterway, it also is a way of carrying a lot of telecommunications, a lot of power cables.
That's what okay.
And I'm going down the road, and I said it at the time, when you're seeing those arcs that look like explosions, that's exactly what a dead short is.
When it just rips apart.
At high amperage, it gives you that massive explosion. And it's a very big, bright white light. It's welding.
So that's what it was.
Well, but basically what you're seeing there is not electricity passing through the conductor. We're seeing electricity
spill
arc
out
and explode out,
spill out,
and
yeah.
it really is like a welding experience. And that the big white light to me was the giveaway.
Okay,
that it was a grounding, a major amperage grounding that forced an explosion. So I don't think there's any doubt about what happened there. It wasn't charges being set or anything like that. It was when that structure collapsed.
It just felt like the whole thing went down really quickly and just.
Oh yeah, but the way
those bridges are constructed, yeah,
of that and those supporting pillars
just couldn't support.
Well, they couldn't take a hit because all the load was vertical in that plane. So when that post and pillar,
they're designed
with massive tonnage.
That's
right?
the thing.
The tonnage behind the vessel, the amount of potential energy that was released was significant, right? I mean, you're not just saying I'm looking for my Volkswagen Beetle to stop when it hits a bollard.
Yeah,
this has got multiple
It's a
tons of a Volkswagen Beetle,
a bollard,
a bollard.
What the flippity is a bollard?
Oh, you're such a heathen, Billy. The things, the pedestrian. Oh, for goodness sake, it's a bollard. Come on, man.
Well, you're the one who calls a crossing guard a silly nanny, or
oh, for fuck's sake,
ain't it?
Silly nanny.
Ain't that what they call them?
I'm getting back on topic here, Billy. You're not throwing me off the edge on this one. So the structural integrity was vertical, and when they gave it a side load, and it wasn't just a little side.
No,
load,
it wasn't a tap.
It has hundreds of tons behind it, so it had the momentum. I don't see any conspiracy behind any of that.
Okay.
But what I do see is it was a very timely vessel blackout.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it was done on purpose. That's my opinion. Just because things like that don't seem to happen.
Now the blackout can be induced because it's electronic. Everything is Wi-Fi. Don't think.
Well, we know that they've got EMPs and localized EMPs and energy weapons of all sorts.
You could get in and corrupt the control system.
Well, yeah, I mean,
there's no question that could or couldn't be done. But a lot of the spin-off conspiracies behind that we saw charges. No, I don't think so.
Well, I didn't know what it was, but you see something.
Oh, absolutely,
happen.
You do. Yeah, you see release of energy.
Yeah,
and that's what that was. But another thing that you've got to consider with that vessel is it had. If you consider the square footage, in this argument, and then compare it to a sail, when that vessel gets side on to the wind, you better have headway. Now, if you don't have headway, that sail will blow out and it will get energy and it will give it significant force. The side of that vessel had a windage to it that could have had an element in how it hit that pontoon. Because I don't know the wind conditions. If someone said, "Oh, it was only blowing 2 knots," I go, "Hell no!" There would have been there certainly was a vessel pilot, a harbour pilot on board. I'm sure it would have been escorted out with tugs.
No tugs.
And that's the one that blows my mind.
No tugs.
With the windage on the side of that vessel without tugs, that would probably need to be questioned.
Yeah, they said no, there were no tugs.
So if there were no escorting tugs.
I forget the reason why, but no escorting tugs.
That would be...
But they did have the harbor master guy.
Yeah, but he still...
But it wasn't even him piloting. It was the Pakistani guy who was piloting.
The pilot only tells the captain where to point the vessel.
Okay.
The pilot does not control the ship.
Okay.
The captain controls the ship at all times.
See, I thought the article that I read said that the harbor pilot actually drives the boat.
No, the captain drives.
He just gets on to be like, hey, go farther this way because it's too shallow and blah, blah, blah.
There's your channel. Off you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were outside that channel too, or inside of it, whatever, whichever way you want.
I think they were well outside of the channel, which again suggests they had some problems before the vessel blackout because they were well outside that channel of approach.
Or they were supposed to be.
Now, at that point, you had to question, why didn't they drop an anchor if they were having trouble in a navigable channel? If they were having navigation issues, where were the tugs?
Yeah.
Right? So, and the pilot would have known he was well out of channel.
Yeah.
So at what point and where was the wind, and should they have dropped anchor a lot more prematurely?
Yeah.
But would the wind have given them a swing angle onto the pontoon? It all depends on weather conditions. So there's a lot to it, but there's a lot that doesn't add up to.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So I hope I've dispelled some of the...
No, I mean, I think it's wide open as far as to...
Absolutely.
I think the biggest thing is just that, in my opinion, it was done on purpose. I can't back that up with anything other than they do these sorts of things on purpose.
We've seen too much of it.
We haven't seen any of... Look, you won't really feel the repercussions of this happening for another 2 to 3 months. As far as
no, there's definitely a delayed impact.
Yeah.
On the effect that we will feel.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Yeah.
And now it's all hush.
Yeah. They just move on to the next thing.
Yeah. What's going on with the operation here? I mean, Baltimore Harbor was shut down. It still
is, and will be for a long time.
Where's the reporting on that?
And,
is that not responsible journalism?
Oh, we won't hear anything until they christen the George Floyd Bridge. You know what I mean? That's what's going to happen.
Stick.
I'm just listening. When you got, phenomenal conversation going on, you can sit back and listen. Yeah, but that's the thing. And when you mentioned that, I can't remember. I don't know if we talked about this or not over the episodes, but we should be. And we're really concerned about that, but they still haven't really explained to us why they essentially nuked East Palestine, Ohio.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're very lucky we weren't part of the water, because I guess it went down in the Ohio, but a lot of things up not far north of us were kind of all impacted.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, what happened there was horrendous. And the handling of it was completely
shocking.
Incompetent. And my kind of theory on that is that just plays into the whole narrative that we're seeing now, that of making everyone lose faith in all of the institutions that we've trusted for a long time.
Look, yeah, that's why you put a small town mayor in charge of the Department of Transportation.
Yeah,
who by the way just disappeared for 3 months so he could use his
leave.
Fake rubber boob, like from Meet the Fockers.
Yeah,
that's exactly what he had. I mean, that's we all laughed at that 15 years ago, and now we're supposed to accept it as something that's serious.
Yeah.
I mean, like Robert De Niro's got a rubber boob and Meet the Fockers or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it was a joke. It was funny. This is the Secretary of Transportation who's leaving while we're having mass crisis, while planes are falling out of the sky, while trains are derailing, while bridges are collapsing, and he's going off somewhere with his fake rubber boob with his husband and their adopted kids who, I mean,
what was that? What happened with the Secretary of Defense that disappeared?
Austin?
Yeah,
I mean,
what happened there? Where did that go?
Nowhere, of course. I mean, he should have been removed immediately for covering up the fact he was rushed to the hospital.
Well, I mean, he may actually have a very serious medical condition. And
he probably does.
But there's protocols they didn't follow.
He probably got vaccinated, so he probably does.
That may well have been part of it. But I mean, you never wish a man ill who's serving his country.
Yeah, but if he's a traitor...
Well, I'm just trying to be polite. I'm trying to be polite.
Yeah.
Even so, if he has an illness at that point, the Secretary of Defense, dude.
Well, when your president is a walking corpse, what do we expect for the Secretary of Defense? I mean, honestly, even Trump called it out. He's like, how many drugs do they have this guy on for the State of the Union address?
Yeah, you saw him crash out.
At first, I thought it was
he ran out of juice.
At first, I figured it was Hunter Biden's cocaine. It's Joe Biden's cocaine that they found at the White House. They are drugging that guy like they did with Elvis. He
clearly slowed down and became less of a present.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm being
polite,
was like which is very unlikely.
It's like in Back to the Future, when Michael J. Fox towards the end, and he's doing whatever, and he starts to see himself fading into nothing, until he completes whatever task it was. It's exactly the same thing.
Hollywood's got it.
Yeah, look, it's a clown show. But I've truly believed that this clown show is being done completely on purpose to make everyone lose faith in all of it.
Because I think a lot of the population has.
Well, they have. I mean,
and where do you pick up the pieces?
How can you have faith in any of this stuff? How can you look?
So now we've got to come back. If we've got to come back anywhere, we've got to come back to local government. We've got to come back to the sheriff. We've got to come back to the systems that work for us locally, regionally, and that has some awkward questions.
Look, in a real situation with where we are at this point, the natural reset is exactly what you just said. For people to organize locally, take care of local issues, build that up to, regional relationships, and eventually those regional relationships connect to national relationships.
We don't have the disconnect at the moment to be able to do that.
In a rebuilding of what this country set out to be to begin with. But in our manipulated, controlled reality that we actually live in, they are destroying everything from the top down. They are doing everything to keep us divided from being able to do those things, which you said, building from the ground up. And they want to then impose a top-down solution onto a problem that they created to begin with, created the narrative that we're all screaming for this to end, and they are going to provide a dystopian solution for it moving forward with transhumanism, with having to go to them to have children because they've destroyed people's ability to procreate without getting some sort of special medication from them, and then they will manipulate all of the what they consider bad, undesirable genes out of. I mean, it's like Brave New World. What they want to impose
now.
What they want to impose
on us the purple smoke, Stewie. You've got me.
What they want to impose on us is a combination of Brave New World and 1984. It's a combination of those two, Huxley and
we as a community can actually reject all of that.
Well, we can
if we stand firm,
and that's people have to stand firm and do what you said. We've got to focus on local solutions.
Yep, and that's I think what we've been trying to do for the last 3 years. Really, is have local solutions to all of our problems, and our problems are immense. Don't get me wrong, but locally, I think we're a pretty stout bunch of folks.
The guy who put out that Let My People Go documentary, which kind of covers some of the J6 nonsense, but mostly it's about elections. Him and the guy who runs the Conservative Daily podcast, Joe Altman, have started this thing called the Gideon 300. And what they're actually doing is they're going around the country. We could probably get them here. It would be awesome if we did. And they'll do a screening of Let My People Go, and then they'll put on a Gideon 300 class where they actually teach you how to organize and how to show up to meetings and the questions to ask, what your rights really are at these meetings, even though they'll try to tell you, well, no, you're not allowed to speak for more than 3 minutes. Well, bullshit. Yes, you are.
I'm feeling Topher Field coming in here.
And get on that for July.
And it's really, this Gideon 300 thing is starting to catch on because these two guys, they're basically like going around the country every weekend to sometimes big places, sometimes tiny places. But people are starting to realize and starting to do it. And we've talked about that here a lot of times. Until you get a force, a group that's big enough to be a force
to be reckoned with,
not violent, but a real force to be able to show force in numbers. None of this is going to change. They're still going to steal your election right in your face.
Oh yeah,
they're going to tell you it's sunny when it's raining, and that's going to continue to happen because right now they've got us all. We've all been so preoccupied because things have been so good for so long. And it's taken us a long time to wake out of our slumber that, wait a minute, the boogeyman's here. We got to get moving.
It's the meme. It is the meme. We are now weak.
Yeah.
We are weak.
Fat and happy.
Yep.
and lambs being led to slaughter.
Yeah, over the edge you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, them pulling their COVID nonsense and how heavy-handed they were with it all has woken a lot of people up.
That wasn't even close to what Australia had to put up.
Well, I know.
Unbelievable.
I wonder what the difference is. Oh, wait. We all have guns and they have none.
They gave them up.
That's why a church has a mass stabbing event and no one can protect themselves. You know?
Yeah.
And we think back to that guy who came into that Texas church a few years ago and tried to start shooting.
Yeah.
One old timer stepped up from like 40 feet away and took him out with one shot.
Well, did you notice from that footage, by the way, of that church event, every single person that was standing up after the shots were fired
already had theirs pulled
were security personnel within the church, and the dude nailed him.
Yeah.
I mean, good and proper.
Yeah.
But every single one of them that was tasked to be church security were the guys that were standing up in that video.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, and they're trying to gaslight everybody right now on the crime thing, you know? Well, guess what? LA, New York, Atlanta, several other major cities are refusing now to report their crime stats to the FBI. So they can stand up there and try to sell us on this bullshit narrative that violent crime is down. Well, no, it's not.
It's just not being reported.
It's
not being reported from the blue cities.
It's not
that are governed.
It's not being reported anymore.
Yeah,
just like the head of the transit department in San
Francisco. But they can't get away with that anymore because we all have X, we all have Instagram, we all have YouTube or TikTok, and everybody's seeing what's actually going on in these cities is direct opposite.
But they're trying to gaslight. Just like the head of the transit authority in San Francisco came out and said, we're not going to be releasing any more videos of the attacks happening on the subway system here because it's provoking racism. Well, why would it provoke racism? Because 98% of the crime that's going on is committed by African Americans? Well, yes, that's why. You know, or an illegal immigrant at this point. So
but it does. It takes some balls and power to you, Stuart, to be able to stand up and say that without fear.
It's the truth,
and therein lies what we need to be dealing with.
Yeah,
and we're not.
Yeah,
but
here's the thing: I have huge sympathy for what is going on in all of these inner city and African American communities. Because in the 1950s, their divorce rate was better than white Americans was. It was 93% of black families stayed together, 87% of white families stayed together.
And how did that
There has been a systematic targeting.
How did that happen?
By the powers that be, by they, which I somewhat explained earlier, a targeting of their community. Where actually, E. Michael Jones, who was a professor at Notre Dame for the longest time, wrote a book about this where what you used to have in these cities was you would have an Irish neighborhood, an Italian neighborhood, a black neighborhood, a Chinese neighborhood.
The Poles will be in there somewhere.
Yeah, a Polish neighborhood. And what they did was starting in the 50s and 60s, they started destroying those tight-knit communities and moving them to the suburbs. Okay? And at that same time, then they started driving African Americans, which were living more of a rural lifestyle because that's what they had always lived, was a rural lifestyle. They started driving them into these inner city ghettos, and then they used the crime because they put them in extreme poverty to drive the rest of these ethnic communities out to where, like up in New York now, Little Italy's like one block. You know what I mean? And back in the 70s and 80s, I mean, it was, 20 blocks was Little Italy. I mean, it's this tight-knit community. And so they got them all into these inner city, basically open-air prisons. And then they bring in crack cocaine, and they bring in the ghetto lifestyle. They bring in,
rap music
and everything else. Then the guy who's president now sponsors and pushes the crime bill, which locks you up 10 times as long for having crack cocaine as opposed to powdered cocaine, which was considered a white man's drug. The CIA creates the crack cocaine that then they push into all of these cities in the 80s, while the CIA and whatever other agency is flying it into the country through Mena, Arkansas, over the watchful eye of Bill Clinton, who then gets rewarded by being president. And they completely destroyed the family unit in these communities. And we're seeing the fruits of that now, to where, there's no control. And then they made it so they made it an incentive for these African American women to have as many children as possible to get more money from the government. And they tell you that if you have a man in the house, we're not giving you any money. So they're giving the women an incentive, even if the man is a decent man, to get him out the door, because they'll end up getting more money from the government for not having him there. So that's what's been done here. So I have a huge amount of sympathy, but what I don't have is any guilt, because I didn't do this. I'm pointing it out that it's happened, but I didn't do it, but they want to make it, then they try to play it.
That's a strategy of social unrest that is on the verge of being unfathomable in my mind. But it does beg another question, which is a little bit perverse from the depravity of that situation, that you would have these huge communities, Italian, Chinese, Polish, Irish, in particular in that New York region.
Yeah, the Northeast.
And they were wonderful communities, but very ethnically driven, which is a little bit counter to the narrative of, well, we all need to diversify. And
right.
So I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
I know.
Are those communities in themselves not embracing the American dream, or are they actually living the American dream under the umbrella of their community? And I don't actually see a problem with that.
No, there was no
now
problem.
What happens when you get airlifted folks from Somalia and where have you dropped into Central and the Midwest into these certain areas? That becomes a problem.
A major one.
Well, hold that thought.
But is that
quick.
not the diversification that we were saying you need to be able to do? But we were quite accepting of the Italian and the Polish and the Irish and the Scots communities.
There's a huge difference. They came here legally, and they worked hard to build lives and
create their
communities where they. They appreciated and celebrated their culture, but they were American.
It offered diversity, and there is that difference. So this is why I'm drawing that conversation out.
Well, now here's what I want to do. Y'all have like 20 more minutes?
Yeah.
You're 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I want to do. We're about an hour and a half now. I want to stop. I'm going to go over to the Patreon show. I want to give the Patreon subscribers a little something. We're going to keep going with this conversation. There's a couple other things I want to dive into real quick. And that way, for people who actually go out there and pay a little bit, you can get a little bit more of a spicy, in-depth conversations. We're going to jump to that. And you can find that at patreon.com/getontap. You'll see our full show, and then you'll see the Patreon only show usually right above it. So you can click on that, usually 20, 25 minutes or so, 30 minutes. And we'll kind of get a little more spicy with it, might cuss a little bit more and kind of get rowdy with it. But I want to take, for other reasons about what I think we're facing in the future, why I think this is a really good conversation about these communities. So, for everybody that's not a subscriber, I urge you to go right now, type it in with your little thumb, patreon.com/getontap, $10 a day minimum. You can always give more, or if you want to do a one, and honestly, for some people out there that do the one-time donations at Venmo,
just make them big,
cash, and
just make them big.
Go to @GetOnTap. I really wish there was a way I could send your email to Patreon and let you get on there. They won't allow it to happen, so you have to do so. I encourage people to go there. If you want to give a big, huge one, just go there and do $10, $20 a month or something and get something in return. You're
not shooting high enough, Billy.
You're getting content. Oh, I'm saying $20, you know, for the people who I don't like Josh Greisfeld, musician. That way, you know, maybe he can give 20 a month. He should, as much as I have promoted his awful music over the years on the show, going on 3 years now, 3 years in the next couple of months. More people who listen to his music through me than ever have through anything he's done. And I mean, yeah, I guess you could say he's done enough shows to where, still no. I've got more downloads and people have showed up at his shows, I promise you. And even still, there's a lot of crossover.
Sorry, I love you, Josh.
A lot of crossover on his shows. A lot of times it's mostly his family that show up these events to make you feel better. So yes, you can go listen to this after show at patreon.com/. As a subscriber over there as well, you know, people send text messages and go back and forth and kind of talk to us, a comment section. I want people to get more active and more involved over there. And look, we have some of these, I'm telling you, we get these cameras coming up soon. We're going to have some big events, some huge guests. Subscribers are going to get an opportunity to come up and hang out at the cabin for a show. Sit on the couch over there, listen to one of these people, maybe ride the four-wheeler, shoot a gun, something. But
blow something up,
you
put
need
that
to be
on
a subscriber to do that. And look, I got good friends out there. They're going to hit me up.
We got friends in low places.
Yeah,
Billy.
I got friends out there that are going to come and ask, "Hey, can I come up there?" Well, you're not a subscriber. Fuck off. I don't care. You know, you might be a naff and I might like you, but if you're a subscriber, you can't give $3 a month to, you know, my guys in the boom boom room. Yeah, I know he can. I know they can. They just pretend like they're not. Oh, I don't know how to do that technology stuff. Yeah, you do. And sometimes I drop these little hints in here to see if people actually will call me out, see if they ever listen. Anyway, go over there. Stuart, thank you so much. We'll have a quick 15 or 20 minutes, finish this conversation. And once again, patreon.com/GetOnTap to hear the after show. Upcoming next, we got some really good shows. State of Appalachia's coming, so be prepared for that and some really cool stuff. Thank you, gentlemen.
I hadn't been this drunk for so long. Spent all my money chasing some good-looking honey down in a honky-tonk. I thought she was a queen of hearts, but she turned into a joker that didn't hang around too long. So, oh Lord, if you're up there smiling down on me, I don't ask for much, I only take just what I need. So give me weed, give me whiskey, and play a Hank Jr. song. Give me weed, give me whiskey, and play a Hank Jr. song. Now I learned at an early age the man up above won't try to steer you wrong. So sure that he'd understand if tonight I decided that I need to get stoned. Taught me that the good book, it holds all the answers in life that I'd ever need to know. Whiskey been and hellbound, this show hit me right. It rocks me right down to my soul.